If you're interested in learning how to make $500,000 on your very first real estate deal while you're in your 20s, you're going to want to stick around for today's episode of Deal by Deal, which is a bonus round with Dominique Park. So usually we're talking about deals that I've done over the years, but I wanted to incorporate a little bit more of other people's successes here in Alaska. So it's not like it's just all about me. It's really about building wealth here in Alaska. So thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So I know about your deal a little bit, but I was going to ask you some questions to walk our folks through it. This was your very first real estate deal?
It was.
And how old were you?
23.
23. So that was a little while ago. And it was a, what type of property?
It was a new construction detached fourplex.
Detached fourplex. Okay, so I remember back then when they were building quite a few of these in the valley, and I was crunching the numbers, and they didn't really make sense to me on the cash flow realm unless you were owner occupying them. And different people saw different opportunities. Obviously, loan type and interest rate makes a difference on those and what you could get for rent. But these properties were selling like hotcakes because it was a great opportunity for folks like you to buy and live in. And when you did that, you did live in it?
I did.
And so after the other 3 units paid their rent, I'm assuming you were living for cheaper than you would have been otherwise?
I was living pretty much rent-free. And the slogan back then was live with.
Rent-free, live for free?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Rent for free.
And that was a little bit of a sales tactic because the truth is, that's if you have 0% vacancy and 0 for management. So if you didn't have good tenants in and they did some damage, and so that was only if it was running at 100%.
And I was told that I was able to get a little bit more for rents than I did, and part of the reason that I couldn't get the higher rents was because they kept building them. So of course as inventory grew, my rents came down a little bit, but all in all, 10, 12 years after the fact, it was still a really great investment.
So I remember around that time, I had lived in my first home for about 5 years. I've got a deal by deal episode on that. When I moved out of it, we rented it for I think $1,300. It was a little house out KGB, mid 80s, so it was not a new construction, nice place, but it was decent. And then they kept building these fourplexes like crazy in the valley, and it really did push the rent down. So when my tenant turned over, I tried to get the 13 or whatever I was getting before, and I couldn't, and I ended up renting it for $1,200. And that doesn't sound like a huge difference, but it really was. That's like somewhere around 8% probably that the market had came down on rents because they built, I don't know how many, like probably hundreds of these units.
So I do believe I was one of the first handful. I think mine was maybe the 3rd one that was built, and I wasn't a realtor at the time, so don't quote me on that. But we definitely didn't see them around as much until afterwards. And they became really, really popular. And I was expecting to get $1,300 a unit, and where I landed was around $1,150 a unit. So when you multiply that by the 3 other units, that adds up pretty quickly for a 23-year-old.
That's $450 difference from what you were told or what you expected. Which is why it's always important to do your own due diligence on something. If somebody's telling you something about what they're getting for a similar unit, you should do your own due diligence and be like, well, they're getting that for this one, but this one's a little further out, or it's a little smaller. And you really want to make sure, because if that $450 would have been a deal breaker for you, it could have been a pretty big problem.
Exactly.
And not to jump too far ahead too quick, you were renting them for $1,150 at the time. What do you get for those units today?
Today we're getting anywhere from $2,000 to $2,200 depending on we charge pat rent, so that's part of it.
Yeah, so not quite double, but $1,000 per unit more. And of course you're not living in them anymore, but you count the 4 units and you're talking about $4,000 a month difference. So obviously time has been in your favor.
It absolutely has.
With inflation and stuff. And so you were in your early 20s, single at the time, or no?
Yes, not married.
Not married. Okay, so single lady, early 20s, buying a brand new fourplex. Pretty big. I mean, I'm guessing it was daunting.
It was pretty overwhelming. I actually tried to pull the plug once because I was really nervous, and the appraisal came in $6,000 low, and I was like, "That's my out. I'm out." But I didn't. The builder ended up coming down to $6,000, although they tried to hustle me for it. I didn't come up on them, and they came down. And then, I stuck with it, and I'm really glad I did.
Awesome. So, what was the purchase price on that?
So the original contract price was $474, but with it coming in low, I ended up paying $469.
$469.
Or sorry, it was $475 original. Yeah.
Okay, so $469 on a fourplex, and I think you mentioned earlier an FHA loan that you bought it with.
Yes.
And so generally those are 3.5% down payment. I'm guessing that's what you paid.
Yes.
and so that was around 17 grand, is that what we talked about earlier?
Yeah, 16, 17 grand.
Okay, so 16 or 17,000, that's a pretty good chunk of money for a single person in their 20s, right?
Yes.
Did you have that money set aside, or did you use family funds?
I had the money set aside.
Awesome. Biggest check you ever wrote?
Yes.
How'd that feel?
Terrifying.
Terrifying? Yeah. My first home was also an FHA. Well, I had a little owner finance mobile home before that. The first home I bought was an FHA, and so it wasn't the big down payment. It was a much smaller purchase price. But still bringing that check just felt like something's like I'm actually investing this in my own home. Really cool feeling.
Yeah, I do remember having the thought, well, if I foreclose on this property for any reason, in my head at the time, I thought foreclosures take 7 years to drop off. I know that's not the case anymore. But I was 23 and I thought, well, then I'll just buy a house when I'm 30, which is when most people buy their first house anyway. So I had rationalized it in my head. I was very terrified, and I knew that, worst case scenario, I could still come out of it on top in the future.
Awesome. I love the way that you looked at the worst case scenario and decided, as bad as it would be, it wouldn't be that bad. It wouldn't be the end of the world. So I like to look at investments as look how much potential you can win, but also what is the downside? What's the potential that you could lose out of this deal? Sometimes when we're looking at bigger deals, it can be like a domino. Like if you bite off a huge deal and it goes bad, you can end up losing enough money to lose other properties. And so I've always tried to keep it to where if I buy this new deal and everything goes wrong, I can't find a tenant, or I lose the whole thing, am I gonna step backwards in my financial position? And is it really gonna hurt, or is it just a little bit? And 7 years seems like a long time for that to hurt, but you're like, that's fine, that's a risk I'm willing to take. And the risk wasn't as big as you thought anyways, but you were still thinking worst case, and worst case is fine.
And if I did lose my house, it was just me, and I'd probably just move back in with my parents, versus now I have 4 kids and the risk is a little different, right? Because I gotta keep a roof over their head, but at the time that was my risk.
Yeah. And of course your $17,000, which is a lot. Did you pay closing costs on top of that, or?
I did.
And so the total check you brought was 25 grand, or?
Probably, I can't remember, but yeah, I
awesome.
did.
So you put $25,000 down,
Yes.
All day long, approximately,
Yes.
on that property. And for a while you were getting to live free, so that was saving $1,000 a month, or close to free anyways, after expenses and vacancy and whatnot. So you were probably making about $1,000 a month, plus the appreciation and tax benefits. How long did you live in that home?
So it was a VA loan, so I was supposed to live in it for 6 months.
FHA?
Oh, sorry, it was FHA.
Yeah. Was it FHA?
It was FHA.
Okay.
But you're still supposed to live in it for 6 months.
You're supposed to live in it for a year.
A year.
Yeah.
We gotta cut that out.
No, we don't.
It was an FHA loan, so you're supposed to live in it for a year. I was in the military, so I did deploy during that time. What was your question? Did I live in it? Yes, I lived in it for 3 months.
How long did you live in it?
By the time I came back, it was 6 months, and then I had some life changes, and so I did move out of it afterwards. I got married, and so I moved in with my husband. So I lived in it for 6 months, but I did have the intent to owner-occupy for the full year.
Yeah.
Just life happened.
And just for clarity on these owner-occupied type loans, whether they're FHA, VA, and some other owner-occupied, you have to have the intent to live in it for a year when you get it, because you're getting a cheaper interest rate or some other sort of perks on that loan. But there's first off, there's no enforcement on that, but I don't really recommend doing that without the intention. But there's a lot of things that happen, life circumstances, getting deployed, getting married, all those things. Sometimes your job changes and all of a sudden you're too far, so they'll let you get another owner-occupied loan within a year under just the right circumstances. So you didn't live there very long though, only 6 months or so.
Yep, 3 months plus the 3-month deployment.
Right, okay, cool. And so that was back, 10 or more years ago. Fast forward today, you already said that property is cash flowing, or you said that you're getting over $2,000 a unit. Do you have the original loan, or did you ever refinance it?
We did refinance it. So I was Air National Guard, so my VA loan was freed up after 6 years of being in the Guard. At the time, I was not 6 years in the Guard, so that's why I used the FHA loan. So we refinanced it to a VA loan, which freed up all of our PMI, our private mortgage insurance, which was roughly $500 a month. So it actually lowered our monthly payments, and we cashed out and paid off some debt from when we first opened my real estate business. So it did a lot of different things for us, but we pulled quite a bit of money out with the cash out refinance. And
tens or hundreds of thousands?
Tens of thousands.
Tens of thousands, okay. So to segue a little bit from this deal to general real estate principles, when you buy a piece of real estate and that property goes up in value and or you're paying down your mortgage on it, one of the cool things is obviously you're not using your equity in that property for your day-to-day things like groceries, because your equity is not super liquid. It's not like banking the money in a bank account, but it is your money. And so you can refinance in a number of different ways we don't need to get into, but regular refinances, home equity lines of credit, private loans. There's lots of things that you can do to tap your equity. And hopefully you're not just gonna go buy a cool boat or something crazy, but if you use that money to put towards another property, another down payment on another good investment, or pay off debt that's higher interest rate, you can really use your equity that you've built and earned in that property to really accelerate your financial growth, even without selling the property. You don't have to sell it to recoup it. So you were able to not just sit on that equity, you made it work for you in other places.
Absolutely.
And even though you refinanced it and pulled out several tens of thousands, that property today, because of the appreciation and the cash flow or the income that's coming in, what do you estimate this ballpark, like how much your family cash flows from that investment today?
Cash flow,
After expenses, roughly
$2,000 to $3,000 a month.
2,000 to 3,000. And on top of that, you still have quite a bit of equity in the property, even after refinancing it. Safe to say you have hundreds of thousands of equity in that property?
More than likely, yes.
More than likely, yeah. And I don't know, we need to know exactly how much you refinanced or on it today, but if you were to estimate what it's worth today, how much do you think that is?
Between $8,000 and $900,000.
800,000 to 900,000 on that. That it was something that I looked at as a non-owner occupant and didn't think it was a very great deal. The reason there is because not owner occupying it, I wouldn't be able to get the same down payment that you had, the 3.5%. I would have had to have maybe 20% or 25%, and as well as probably a higher interest payment also for a non-owner occupied loan. So that made it not work for me, which is why it's not always about necessarily the property and the price together. And I say this all the time, it's about the terms. Well, an owner occupant, you were able to get terms that I wouldn't have been able to do it at the time. I know my parents were looking for multifamily at the time, and we found them a few good deals, and they looked at those too, and they're like, these just don't pencil for us with a more expensive loan, and all that. It just didn't make as much sense. So you're saying the property is worth between 8 and 9, which makes sense, and you're renting them even after all expenses. You're making several $1,000s a month, and you have been for quite a while. Would it be safe to say that you probably profited somewhere around $500,000 from that property?
I would say so.
Yeah. And so you put 25,000 into it in the beginning. I'm sure you've put more into it since then.
Of course, I'll share one story. In the first 3 months that I was deployed, I had one of my first tenants, because I didn't know how to vet the tenants very well, because I was a very new property manager owner. I had a tenant with a dog who ate my gravel.
Yep.
So in the first 3 months of owning the property, I had $6,000 of damage from the tenant.
Yep.
So yes, there were definitely some expenses there, but not to the tune of $500,000.
Right. Now, over the years, your cash flow has been able to cover that, even if it hurt at the time.
It hurt
Maybe
at the
for a
time.
minute there it didn't. But over the years, it's more than paid for all of its own expenses, its maintenance.
Absolutely.
Management. I know you guys do your own management, but still, it's a line item you can say, well, it takes effort. And so your $25,000 initial investment has turned into a $500,000 profit from launching other stuff. This is a very low level as far as difficulty goes investment. This is something that a single 23-year-old person can do with 3.5% down. I know most 23-year-olds don't have quite that much money, but that's not a crazy amount of money. And you can get gifted that money from family or for something too, so it's not like everybody has family that can gift them money either. But the point is, if you start early, it's going to change your world hugely to get into quality real estate that you want to own for a long time. And I know this wouldn't have been feasible for you, but you made somewhere in the neighborhood of $500,000. Imagine if you would have bought 10 of them.
That is my only regret. I wish I would have bought one a year.
Yep.
Which is something my dad told me to do, and for whatever reason, I just didn't.
It seemed like a
I
lot.
just didn't.
And on year 2, you couldn't see the benefits. On year 2, you're like, I got the $6,000 drywall problem.
Mhm.
And then on year 3, you're like, oh, it's starting to feel a little bit better. And year 6 and 7, you're like, oh, this is feeling really good. And then now today, you're like, damn.
Why didn't I buy more?
I should have bought one every year. And so it's like the old proverb or whatever, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago.
Mhm.
It's like the best time is today. I'm a true believer that buying real estate is the best way to move the financial needle, and it is so important for young people to get into real estate early. Was there anything cool about the property that I missed or didn't go over?
I don't think so.
Awesome. So go buy real estate, folks. Give us a call.
Thanks for watching.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Mhm.
If you guys have any real estate needs whatsoever, please reach out. In the meantime, please like, subscribe, share, follow, comment, and you can find me on any of these other places that you enjoy your content. So thanks very much. Really appreciate it.